Now, the British government is preparing to trigger Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol, which could lead to a trade dispute between the EU and the UK. That's according to our next guest, Simon Coveney, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Defence. Minister, thanks indeed for talking to us this morning. Is this a fait accompli at this point? Is this going to happen, the triggering of Article 16?
No, I don't think anything is a fait accompli, but certainly a lot of evidence suggests that the British government is now preparing to trigger Article 16 after COP, which ends this week. I think we need to clearly be preparing for that and thinking about the repercussions of that, because I think they will be very serious should that happen. And that's why I and others are out now talking openly about what I think is a very significant threat to the British-Irish relationship and also the UK-EU relationship, because I think the British government shouldn't underestimate the impact of making a decision to set aside elements of the protocol and effectively deliberately breaking an agreement that they made. And I think the EU has been extraordinarily positive for the last 6 months or so on trying to find solutions to genuine issues that have been raised in terms of the implementation of the protocol in Northern Ireland, whether it's on medicines, whether it's on sanitary and phytosanitary checks, whether it's reducing the customs burden, whether it's on governance, whether it's on chilled meats, whether it's accepting an extension to grace periods, whether it's pets, whether it's reducing an EU presence in Northern Ireland, like all of these things. And I list them all out because people do need to understand.
They won't take yes for an answer, the British government, basically.
Well, exactly. I mean, the EU has been really bending over backwards to try to find solutions to problems. They've listened to people in Northern Ireland, to business leaders there, to political leaders there, and each time the EU comes up with solutions. And they published a formal paper on solutions just a few weeks ago. Each time the UK banks that and says not enough, we need more, and introduces new areas and new problems. And I think that's been a very successful negotiating strategy for Lord Frost and for the Prime Minister, because there have been a lot of flexibilities shown on the EU side, while the UK has given nothing. But at some point, that negotiation strategy runs out of road, because the EU will determine that they are simply not negotiating with a partner in good faith, and regardless of what they do.
Just on that point of good faith, Minister,
will ask for more and more and more.
Just on that point of good faith, I mean, you've been in politics for more than 20 years at this stage. Did you ever imagine a British government would effectively welch on a deal that they'd agreed? What is it? Is it 2 years? Is it less than 2 years ago? Did you ever imagine that scenario?
I mean, I have to say, I think it's extraordinary that, less than 2 years ago, the British government signed off on an international treaty, which has become international law, in order to facilitate what they wanted, which was to proceed with Brexit in a structured way. And the element of that agreement, which was central to trying to solve the problems on the island of Ireland, which is the Northern Ireland Protocol, which let's not forget was a concept that emerged out of London, not Brussels. So what the EU wanted and what Ireland had supported was what was called the backstop, which the previous Prime Minister Theresa May had accepted, which would have treated Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom equally in terms of ensuring that there weren't barriers to trade and so on. It was Boris Johnson's cabinet that then decided they wanted to do things differently. They proposed the concept of treating Northern Ireland differently, and the EU worked with them on that. And the result of that was the protocol. And now it's the British government that is saying the protocol has to change, and if necessary, we'll trigger what's called Article 16 in the protocol, which is really a technical mechanism that allows one or other side to potentially set aside, after a period of consultation, elements of the protocol temporarily because of some emergency that needs a response. And here we are now, seeing that provision effectively being potentially abused as a way of setting aside large parts of the protocol.
Why are they doing this? I mean, Is it naive to think that it can't be to do with the unionists, the Ulster unionists? That is hardly why they're doing it. Or is that the reason, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think what's strange about the latest disagreement between the two sides is that, the paper that Vice President Šefčovič published, which dealt with, providing guarantees around medicines, it dealt with the chilled meats issue. It proposed to reduce SBS checks by 80% and customs checks by 50%. Now, that was a direct response to what business leaders and political leaders in Northern Ireland were asking for.
So is it just permanent chaos? Is that almost the policy of the British government?
No, but the priority here, for me, never seems to be Northern Ireland. It always seems to be centred in Westminster, because all of a sudden now the ECJ is the main issue, which has never been a big issue in Northern Ireland. I mean, it's become an issue for some politicians in Northern Ireland because the British government has decided to make it a central issue. But I mean, as I've said many times over the last number of weeks, this is the British government asking for something that they know the EU can't deliver.
Okay.
I mean, you can't have a situation where you would have rules that are EU rules and regulations as they apply to the protocol, because the protocol effectively is an extension of the EU single market for goods to Northern Ireland, and therefore EU rules need to be enforced. What the British government are essentially asking for now is that a British court would determine EU rules as they apply in the protocol, having signed up to something completely different. They know that the EU can never agree that, but they're insisting on that being the central issue now. So you have to then question whether or not the British government actually wants an agreement right now.
Well, which leads me to my next question: is it impossible to do business with Boris Johnson? Is it impossible to trust Boris Johnson?
Well, look, I mean, we have done business with Boris Johnson. I mean, when Leo Varadkar
but he's torn up the deals.
Well, he hasn't yet.
He's about to.
But he is saying that that's what he wants to do. That he wants to essentially rewrite an international treaty that's not even 2 years old. And what the EU is now saying, I think, is from the outset here, we have said that the withdrawal treaty, which includes the protocol, and the trade agreement are both interlinked. One is contingent on the other. And so if the withdrawal treaty isn't being implemented, well, then can we implement the trade agreement? And that's why people are now saying, if one collapses, will the other collapse as well, as a response?
Does that mean a trade war is inevitable?
Well, I certainly hope not. And
hard to see how it can be. I know, and I understand why you would say you hope not. Hard to see how it can be avoided, though, isn't it?
Well, it can be avoided by the British government not triggering Article 16 and setting aside.
But they're not going to do that. He's in the Prime Minister is in full sabre rattling mode.
Yeah, but sabre rattling is one thing. Actually, following through on that is another. And I think one of the reasons why I'm as blunt as I am at the moment, and the Taoiseach is as well, by the way, we're very much on the same page on this, is that I think that it needs to be clearly understood, not only in Number 10, but also in the British Parliament, that there are really significant consequences for Britain if they decide to set aside international law, which is essentially what they're doing. So let's call it what it is. This isn't setting aside an element of a protocol that sounds like a technical issue. This is essentially setting aside international law for political reasons. And the other thing I think that it's important to say is that it wasn't just a Boris Johnson signed agreement, although it was that also. This was an agreement that was also ratified in the British Parliament. And so this is the British Parliament actually also allowing international law.
The mother of all parliaments.
Well, I think that this week we're unlikely to see Article 16 triggered. Vice President Šefčovič will meet Lord Frost again at the end of this week in London because there are still talks ongoing. And I think all of us need to encourage progress in those talks, but also realism, because we cannot continue on with the EU giving more and more and more in terms of flexibility and compromise, the British government banking that and offering nothing in return except demands for more compromise.
Okay.
Because I think the EU has had enough of that.